One of the first things they ask after your name and what religion, they ask you, where do you want your body sent? And I was like, oh, shit.
Inspired by love for fitness, sparked by Rocky, Brandon DeShields carved his own path, transforming struggle into strength.
Today, as the founder of Morphed Fitness, he's here to share that true power is born from the courage to rise above.
Just growing up like really poor. I used to sell candy in school. Fast forward to 15. Now I'm selling.
So you own a gym, and you seem like you're a pretty world-class trainer.
There's a lot of certified trainers. There's not a lot of qualified trainers.
It seems like young boys really need to see a father figure.
Some people confuse raising a child with providing for a child, right? I don't owe you anything. I actually gave you the greatest gift anyone could ever give, and that's life. So you owe me, and all they owe me is doing something with the life that they have. That's it. And a Porsche.
Misery Desiree podcast.
Brandon DeShields, I'm so happy to have you on.
Thank you.
So you're an entrepreneur, you're an intellectual, you're a father, and you've had this incredibly challenging life. I heard you on the Gurus and Game Changers podcast the other day, and I had to have you on, dude. I'm so excited to hear your story.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Gurus to Game Changers was a friend of mine. I used to training in a town near me, and he always told me that I should start a podcast.
Yeah.
And I was kind of like, man, I'm trying to do like a million things. But he started one, and he's like, he messaged me. He's like, you have to be on here. You have to be my first guest.
Oh.
And I was like, sure, let's do it. So it worked out. He's doing a great job with his thing too. He's a really good guy, really, really good guy. So it was an honor for me. It was a pleasure.
So you own a gym, and it sounds like the most of your job is training people in the gym. Like you seem like you're a pretty world-class trainer from what I've heard.
Yeah, well, I definitely think I am, for sure. And I really just carried myself like that. Once I really got into training, I really started to just hypnotize with myself with that, just saying I'm like the best trainer, I'm the best trainer, and really just studying a lot. I didn't go to school for it, but I studied. I'm talking about a lot, like a lot. Just in my time being away, you don't really get to do a lot. You can watch TV, and the unit I was on, they had other things to entertain people, but I wasn't entertained by stuff like that. I just wanted to, absorb as much as I could, because I knew when I was able to be released that I was going to do this stuff right here. So, yeah.
In your time away, obviously, you're talking about prison.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm interested in that. I actually want to hear the story, if it's okay with you, of how you got arrested and you got jailed.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was June 22nd of 2012. And I, for years, for the longest time, I sold like a lot of drugs. And I was a person that was always able to, I guess I always had influence. I always had influence. I was always able to talk to people and like be just charismatic. I guess I'd be described as a charismatic person. Well, at least that's how people uh tell me. But I was a sports player and things like that. When you're a sports player and you got the whole jock vibe and all that, you tend to just be like a people person. So like every drug I could get my hands on, I tend to be pretty good at it. And just growing up really poor, we were just really, really poor people. And when you don't know it, it's you're just ignorant to it. You're oblivious to it. And then one day I found out we were poor. And I asked my mom one day, what happened. And she said she didn't know. She's like, she didn't know where I got it from. I just came home one day. I was like a single digit kid, maybe nine, 8 or 9. And she, I talked to her about being poor. And she said, from then, I was just on this idea of being rich
Mm.
Um, and she said everything I could do that, like I did it, to try to be rich. And so, you know, was by 14, sorry, by 14, um, had nowhere to live. I was like a homeless kid, just kind of roaming around town. And a family of a friend of mine, they took me in. I celebrated my 15th birthday with his family. And another friend of mine, I noticed that just hanging out with him, we would smoke weed throughout the day, just doing regular, like, bored kid stuff. And I seen that people would hand him money in his handshakes. And I was like, "Yo, how do you do this?" And he showed me. And it was a thing I always had like an entrepreneur mind. I mean, my first thing I ever did, I was like a kid, maybe like probably like 7, 8. I used to fix bikes. I always had like I
Wow.
was kind of a lot more like mechanically inclined. So I used to fix bikes and I used to try to sell or fix people's bikes in the neighborhood for money. I didn't get one sale. I never got one customer.
Mm.
But and then by like sixth grade, I used to sell candy in the school. My aunt used to work for this candy company. She would always bring all these boxes of candy home. And I was kind of like, I seen the stores selling candy, so maybe I'll sell candy. And I would just bag it up and take it to school and sell it. And I was like, it was good. I was like actually doing well in it. And that was my first like introduction to like really making money from a thing that I sold. And then, fast forward to 15, now I'm, selling weed now. And I just learned from watching movies, like things like Scarface. I watch Scarface every single day. It's like an old Al Pacino movie.
Yep.
I watched Scarface every single day and was like hypnotized by like what he was saying. And especially like that one rule was like, don't get high on your own
Mm.
supply. So I was like, okay, don't smoke it, sell it. And that's what I did. So then back in 2012, I did that from 15 to 25 and got arrested at 25. Um, and I treated it like it was a movie, right? I'm like in the police. I couldn't believe that it was me going through it. And I'm in the police station and I'm just kind of like, I don't know anything. I don't know anybody. Like, you got the wrong person type deal. And I'm just in there. And they're telling me all this stuff. They're like, you're gonna do 7 years, you're gonna do all these years. And I'm just like, yeah, you guys are saying whatever to try to scare me into like telling on anybody. And when I tell you, like, I had the most honest police officers, like these guys were not like they were not like the ones that people show on TV, like the corrupt ones and all that. These guys were like, I'm talking from that point into the court hearings, these guys were honest. Like, they came to court, they didn't make up one lie.
Wow.
Everything they said was like facts. Like, it went exactly by the paper. It started looking good for me because they were just telling the truth. They weren't making up stuff in court. Um, so we ended up doing like what was called like a negotiated plea. So it kind of saved you from going to trial. Because if I went to trial and lost, it would have been a 15-year sentence.
Wow.
But because it was my first arrest as an adult, they offered me like a deal. And my first offer was 7 years, but they wouldn't come off of it. And so my attorney's like, hey, he'll plead guilty if you just drop it down to 5 years. If the least we can get is 5 years. So they agreed to 5 years. And I'm like, if that's as low as it can go, all right, cool. That's the lowest it can go. And they're like, all right, cool. So we, fast forward another year because I'm, posting bails and, you know, doing everything I could do to stay home because I had a newborn son. So I had a 6-year-old at the time and a 1 month old at the time of my arrest. Fast forward another year, just continuing the case and just paying all these different bills to make sure I can stay home. Um, they were like, yeah, we can do, we'll do the 5 years, which I was like, all right, cool. And I get into court and uh the judge doesn't have to agree to accept negotiated pleas. That's just a thing that the defendant's attorney, like my attorney, and the district attorneys discuss. But ultimately, the judge has to say whether or not he accepts the plea or doesn't accept the plea. Um, so, I'm going in to the hearing. I already signed that I agree that I'm going to do the 5 years. We get into court, and the judge says he looks it over, and I remember him asking the district attorney, like, what did he do to get a lesser sentence? And he was like, well, Judge, we just negotiated it. And he said, like, did he cooperate? Did he give any names? Did he do anything like that? And he was like, no, sir. He didn't give anything. It's just a thing his attorney and I discussed and negotiated. And he was like, I don't accept this. And it was like, this stuff needs to be ran consecutive. And literally, with the stroke of a pen, he just circled consecutive and it gave me 2 extra years, just like that. And I was like, then my head started. So I was lost after that. I was like, hold on. Did I just go from 5 years to 7 years because he circled a word? Because on the plea deals, it's just the times you're going to do, and whether if it's circled concurrent, that means all these times are going to be ran together. If it's circled consecutive, that means you have to do all these times one after another. All these numbers are going to be added up. And he scribbled out concurrent and circled consecutive. And I was like, oh shit. And that was it. I was like, that was it. Um, I kind of just looked back, looked at my mom, my dad, I had my cousins in there, my brothers in there, everybody's in tears. I'm like, yeah, that's when I realized like I really messed up. That it throughout the entire process, I'm just still in the ignorant state of mind. I'm still, smoking blunts every day, drinking to try to like wash it away and acting like it's just want to go away. And it didn't. And that's when I realized once I seen my family crying, that's when it was real to me that, what, I just messed up. And uh 7 years are a really long time, really long time. And I was like, you know what? I gotta do it. So got to the prison, and it's a massive prison out here. It's called SEI Graterford. It's closed down now. It's SEI Phoenix, but back then it was called SEI Graterford. And I'm talking a massive jail. It's like I think there's like 400 cells on each block. Each block holds about 200 people in each cell. I think just to not max the blocks, I think it was about 600 people on each unit. So you're talking, and it's not a big place. It's condensed. The cells were maybe 6 by 12. So it's a long cells, like 12, maybe 11, 12 feet, but about 6 feet across. You can sit on your bunk, lean over and turn the light on. It's that close of a space. Yeah. The toilet uh, sits directly underneath the sink. So if you're sitting down on the toilet, the sink is directly on your back. It was a wild experience
How
for
many how
sure.
many people in a cell?
Two people in the cell.
Yeah. Yeah.
There are two people in the cell, for sure. And contrary to what some people that just don't know about prison believe, is they think that you're separated in prison by the crime that you commit, and it's just not true. You could be doing 2 years, your cellmate could be doing life in prison. It's not separated by the crime that you commit or anything like that. Um, because I've just learned this while being in there. People that are sex offenders become a target that way because if you're separated by the crimes you commit, that means all the sex offenders would be with each other, and then that lets people target them a lot easier. So yeah, everyone's just kind of mixed in together,
Can you find
and
out what somebody else did?
only if, excuse me,
Mhm.
only if you get cool enough with the person and they want to tell you,
Mhm.
or if you're talking to people and your case doesn't really sound like solid, and people are kind of like skeptical of it. And there are definitely people that they just call home and they get a person to pay to, because all this stuff is public information. They just pay to get your information
Mhm.
and get your information looked up. And I mean, I've seen guys who say they have whatever case and end up being sex offenders or something, and they get assaulted. Their cellmates assault them, because it's like there is like an honor code in like the street culture where like women and children shouldn't be touched, right? Like especially like sexually, you just don't touch people like that,
Mm.
you know. And even if people are shot or anything like that, it's like there's a thing that they're playing by. There's a rule that they're playing by that says this comes with it. Um, so yeah, you only find out when it's things like that if you're good, or if a person is trying to like appeal their case and they want you to read over the stuff like that. So you'll find out that way. Um, but yeah, for the most part, guys don't really say what they're there for. A lot of times it's like if it's your cellmate and your celly's talking to you about his case, or you're talking about your case, and yeah, that's really the only time
You said
that like
if
what a person
you
is.
said if somebody wants you to read something over, and from what I've heard, you're a very literate and obviously a very well-spoken guy. Did you get appealed to a lot to help people out with?
Yeah,
Mm.
it's interesting. I was into law first. I had met a man up there who he was convicted. I forget what he was convicted of actually. But we ended up being from the same area, from the same county. We were just on a visit one day, and we used to both work out a lot in the yard. And we're on the way back from our visit, and he's telling me like, yeah, after he got sentenced to 20 years, his mom became a judge because she watched how he was mistreated in court, and she was like, I don't never want this to happen to anyone else ever again. So his mom became a judge, it was the wildest thing. And he started studying law through what's called like Blackstone law or Blackstone legal or something, to where it's like you could still be a paralegal even if you have felonies. So I started doing that, and I was like, I'm gonna try to build my own case. And I just happened to be good at reading information, retaining it, and understanding it. And I was always like this in school. Like I never did homework in school. I never took a book bag home. I was a really good test taker because I can pay attention really well and retain the information. And then when it was time to take tests, I can just spit it right back out.
Hmm.
So I always did really well with stuff like that throughout my entire life. So guys would definitely talk to me, but when it's things like that, you end up being like the bearer of bad news with a lot of stuff, because some guys will have multiple charges or have been to prison multiple times, and they want to hear that the grounds that they're raising on appeal are going to get their freedom or grant them their freedom. And when you look over everything and you look over the language, it's like, no, it's like you can still try it. There's like an old basketball saying, like, you miss 100% of the shots that you don't shoot. But it's like you can still try it, but looking at the language of it, it doesn't look like it's going to be good, but still try it. You never know. Right. And so yeah, definitely was leaned on a lot when it came to things like that, when it came to like the legal stuff. But then fitness was brought to my attention by a guard in there, and it just took me, definitely I was just intrigued by it from there.
How? How did that happen?
I used to just work out in the yard all the time. Really good friend of mine. I hope he's doing well. Um, we became like really cool in there. I thought he was like a white supremacist. Because he had this tag, he had this flag on his arm. It looked like I thought it was like a Confederate flag. But I never asked any questions because I was like, you know what? If he is a white supremacist and he wants to work out with me, all right, cool. Like all good. And one day I found out like he just showed me his dad. I'm like, it was a flag of Puerto Rico.
Oh,
And yeah, his dad's Puerto Rican. I thought because he looks like a white guy.
yeah.
And he was like, no, he was like, man, he's like, I'm Puerto Rican and white, bro. He's like, I'm not, I thought he was white supremacy. So I was like, man, so we said we used to work out all the time. And one of the officers, I was on the way to the law library, and one of the officers, she had stopped me on the walkway and she had said, like, hey, I seen you working out in the yard. You should be a trainer when you go home. And in 2012, 2013, people weren't in the gym, at least not in my area. People weren't in the gym like that. Um, so I didn't know what she was talking. I was like, to train what? Like animals? Like, like athletes? Because I only knew training to be for like dog training, like pet training, or like training some sort of like athlete or something. And she was like, no, um it's about to be really big. And this was 2015. She had told me this. And I was like, all right, I'll check on it. But I was still doing the law thing. I'm like, I'm gonna go ahead and do this paralegal stuff, whatever, whatever. I still had 5 years left to go. Um, and then I was like, let me see what she's talking about. So anytime I seen her on the unit with us, on the cell block with us, she would always say, like, hey, you should get this guy as a member to your gym because he needs to get in shape. Like this dude is like got his belly out. And I was like, yeah, I was like, you know what? Like, I'll definitely do that and I'll give you a discount just for referring people. And you know, as I started just training more and trying to learn as much as I could. So I used to read like the Muscle and Fitness magazine, the Flex magazine, a lot of bodybuilding magazines. Got my hands on the Arnold. It's like an Arnold encyclopedia. It's like a massive book, like I guess written by Arnold or his team of people. Um, Started training there. Built a team of people. It was about 8 to 10 guys in there. We call it a car. We call it your workout car. Um, and you just tend to build it. And I always loved science, and it's a training. It involves a lot of science, so I loved it. It was like perfect for me. Then 2018 came, and I got textbooks from ISSA, and I started just paying for my. I think my certifications cost like $50 a month, and I was like, I would just work and then send my money home so I can pay for my courses because you can take it um, like through like written correspondence. And I was like, man, this is like beautiful. So I was like, now when I get home, I'm certified at a thing and I'll be able to do this. And so the entire time I'm telling myself, like, I'm gonna be the greatest trainer in my area. Like, I'm gonna come out there, I'm gonna do this thing, and I'm gonna open the gym up and I'm gonna like take it over. And I'm just telling myself this every day, but I realized that who I was might not be suitable for the thing I wanted to do. Right. Like I was still rough. I still like, used um like the N word to refer to guys and the B word to refer to women.
Hmm.
And I was like, I need to stop that. I got to change these things. And then, throughout the time, things happen. People leave you. People, just they live their lives, So, the woman I was with at the time was like, you know what, it was just too much time for her. And she was like, I can't be around anymore. And I was like, you know what, it was hard for me in the beginning to accept it, but I realized like, you know what, I have to like let people live their lives, right? And so I was like, you know what, cool. It took me about a good 3 days to like really get over that. But then there was a point where I was like, what's the point, right? Because you're stripped of everything that right? Um, you go to prison, they strip you of your clothes, take everything off. You're totally nude, like absolutely physically naked, right? And then all the titles that you have, whether it's dad, um, husband, all those things, you can't actively do those things. So they're temporarily suspended. So you're stripped of everything. And it said to me, like, now figure out who you are,
Hmm.
right? Because you don't have these titles anymore. You can't play dad anymore, right? You can't play husband anymore. You can't do those things. Who are you? And I was like, I had no idea who I was, right? Like, I wasn't in the streets anymore. I didn't have, I looked at it like a movie, right? It was like the town I was in was the set. My clothes and jewelry were my wardrobe was my costume, like gun and all those things, and money, that's your props, and then your friends, that's your supporting cast. And I realized like I don't have any of that. Like, who is Brandon now that I don't have all these things? And September 2017, I was like, I cannot do it. Like it was rough. And started plotting my I was gonna do a suicide by cop, by like officer. Um because it was like I felt like I didn't have anything else to live for. Didn't have anything, right? I didn't have money on my books because I never asked for money while I was away. That was another, like, you see guys call home and they want people to put money on their accounts and all those things, and they're frustrated with everybody for not doing it. But I never asked for like a dollar from anyone because I felt like this was my thing, right? That I got myself into, and I need to feel what it's like to be in here. But I also was ready to just opt out. And um I started thinking about my sons, Bishop and Braden, and I thought, like, you know what, like the world is gonna suck if I'm not in it. Like, it's not gonna be cool. Like they like think about what they would think about me. Like, damn, my dad got himself into this situation and then wasn't strong enough to ride it out. And I was like, they're probably better off without me, right? So I'm thinking about exactly how I'm gonna do it. And I was like, you know what? Once I had it in my mind, I was like, cool. Now I just got to wait for the 2 to 10 shift to come on because that's when I'm going to act this thing out. That's when it's going to happen. But you ever notice, like, when you're waiting for a time of a thing that you really want to have, and it seems like that time takes forever to get there? I'm looking at the clock. I'm like, why is it taking so long to get to 2 o'clock? So I started reading this book. It's called The Mastery of Destiny, written by James Allen. And I just got stuck in it. And before I knew it, like they were calling count and counts at like 4 or 5 o'clock. And I was like, yeah, I missed the 2 o'clock window. I was supposed to make this happen in 2 o'clock. And but in that book is the thing that woke me up. And it told me like fate is another thing. You're in control of your destiny. If you're a billionaire, it's because you did what was necessary to be a billionaire, right? Like, and if you're not, and whatever it is that you are in your life, it's based on the things that you did or what you didn't do. And it let me realize like I have to take accountability for everything that I do. Yeah. And I really got on a mission of like recreating myself and making myself someone different. So I used to listen to these same 2 songs by Rick Ross over and over and over and over and over.
Which ones?
Every one is called Family Ties and the other one's called Pirates. Um and if I could ever meet him, I would tell him like what those songs did for me. I'm talking back to back for hours, just playing it in my head and then telling myself like, okay, I want to be like this, and I don't want to be like this, or I want to add this to myself and I want to take that from me. I really sat and did this. One of Rick Ross' albums was Self-Made, and I was like, I'm going to do this. I want to make myself. I'm going to create the branding that I'm going to make it so everybody that left me, they're going to feel like shit because they left. Right? Like, I'm going to be such a great person. Everyone's going to want to be around me. Everyone's going to love to be around me. And I'm not going to be a people pleaser. Right? I'm going to be so confident and arrogant. People are not going to know why they love it. They're just going to be like, damn, I love this guy. And the real part came of putting it into like play now, like applying it. And every single day in prison, every single day, you gotta practice it. You gotta be the same thing. You gotta put it into play now. Because one thing I've seen for sure is everyone, whatever they were doing in prison, when they got home, they did 100% of it. And if they were smoking and getting high while they were in prison and they went home the next day, they went home and smoked and got high. That was it. So I was like, okay, I want to be this person every single day while I'm in here. Every day. When people see me, they're going to see me reading, they're going to see me studying, they're going to see me practicing my craft every single day, every waking moment. And that's what it was. So when it came my time to leave, everyone knew. I mean, it was so much love that was yelled out to me through the doors from the men that were locked in there because they knew I wasn't coming back. They knew that. They knew like this guy is like they I heard one guy yell, "Yo, I'm gonna see you on the Kardashians." I was like, all right, like yo, that's serious. People knew because I was in my own lane. I never had any issues with anybody like that because everyone knew they're going to see me out on the block. I'm going to have my books on the table. They knew what table I'm going to be at. So most guys, I got so many books from guys that they were just like, man, I had these workout books in the cell here. I see you going to go out there and do this thing. Go ahead and do your thing with it. And that was it. And had to, just made it happen. Just I knew that you know, once I got my time, like I had to, make the most of it. Like I couldn't slack. I'm like, I can't slack. I can't give up on a thing like that. I almost wasn't here. I almost took my own life. Um, so knowing how close I was, uh, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna make it worth something now. So yeah,
Damn, dude. I think we are gonna see you on the Kardashians. That's right up their
that'd be
alley
cool.
too. Kim
That would be cool.
Yeah. Kim Kardashian is all about trying to free people who have been locked up like when they're not guilty and
Yeah,
stuff. Like
yeah, I
yeah.
seen that, which is I think that's a cool thing because some of those cases are like they're keeping people locked up that refuse to tell on other people. But I'm like, they might not have known anything to tell you, right? You can't just assume that they knew something. You can't like my girl didn't the girl I got arrested with, she didn't know, she couldn't tell you anyone's names.
Mm.
Right? Like no one says like, hey, wife, come with me to pick up drugs from such and
Yeah.
such and come back. Like, because it's a dangerous thing, right? Like it's a dangerous like thing. You don't take other people with you to meet other people. I'm like, that just like logically, it just doesn't make any sense. But I guess they assume like people like us that do illogical things think illogically also. And it's like, no, we just really play the hands that we are dealt. And that's really what a lot of it is. Like I didn't want to sell drugs at all.
Mm.
I got so bored with it that I could stand it. I actually that was the one thing I complained about, which I'm not a complainer. That was the one thing I hated. I hated it. After a while, it was just like I just didn't want to do it because I felt like this can't be what I was born for.
Mm.
Right? This can't be right. Like I have to be able to do something. And so I despised it after a while.
I had a friend
And
who
I just
used
couldn't
to
stand it.
I had a friend who used to deal drugs and I think she just sold weed, but she told me like the best part of it was that people would be so happy when they see you. But I was thinking
Yeah,
like, yeah, but it's like this fake happiness. It's like
it
they're just
is.
fixing an addiction. Like they're not like a gym. I go to the gym. It's a place of spirituality. Everyone at the gym, no matter who they are, is pointing upwards. Like they're bettering themselves.
Right.
The
Right.
drug dealing is they're always happy to see you, but they're just like it's like they're just feeding a hungry ghost. It just never ends. It's a bottomless pit.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. It's such a false like thing. And I think when I hear people talk about like trying to fix things like that, I'm like, you have to fix why people get into it in the first place, which a lot of times is like depression and or some sort of mental illness. And with some people, it's just boredom.
Mm.
They have nothing else to do. Like in these small towns, kids had nothing we had nothing else to do.
Mm.
And I mean, we had friends that lived in nice neighborhoods and all that. They wanted to sell drugs also because they were bored. And I couldn't understand why kids that lived in these nice homes wanted to do the same things that we did. We were like, we're trying to get money so we can move into a neighborhood like this. You want to sell for what? Right? Like, and it just was like, I'm bored. I have nothing else to do. And it was kind of like, okay, like it was a strange thing.
I
So
think it's a quick way to get status when you're young, like when you're in high school, like
yeah.
everyone likes you. You can be like king shit of your little of your little high school.
Yeah, I got yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I guess so.
Um, I'm I've heard you say a few times you've just talked about these like mindset shifts that you've had. And I just want to point a couple of them out. So the first one that I noticed was when you said you were going into prison, and it sounded like you just said, okay, this is what I'm doing. I'm going to do it. And there's a real difference between somebody who's dragged into something kicking and screaming. It's like the hero's journey. Like in any story, in any of the great stories throughout time, the hero has to willingly embark on the journey. And if he's kicking
Right.
and screaming, he's not really the hero. He's never really fully committed. And it sounds like when you were going into prison, you walked into prison instead of being dragged into prison mentally. I'm not sure if that's
Yeah.
true. Hmm.
Yeah, there was a guy with me, a younger guy with me. He was actually a friend of mine's brother. And he was, and he'll probably see this and be like, nah, but he was frightened. He was scared. And I realized like, okay, this isn't the time to be scared, right? Because one of the first things they asked us after your name and what religion are you in or what gang are you in, they ask you, where do you want your body sent? And I was like, excuse me? It said, where do you want your body sent? You know, this is prison. You could have a heart attack, you can fall down the stairs and die, or someone can kill you. And I was like, that's when I was like, hold on, what? Like, oh, nobody's killing me, like at all. Like I'm living. And I realized like not gonna happen. I gotta make sure like I'm always good. Like I'm always gonna be fine. And but I seen that he was with me. And I was like, you know what, I gotta watch out for him. I gotta keep an eye on him to make sure like he stays close. Right. And I just knew like it's hard for people. It's hard on the new people, but it's also hard on your family. Your family doesn't know how to do prison time either, right? Like they don't, not everyone writes letters, right? Not everyone knows what to do throughout the prison process. So a lot of times we're guys of us that those of us that are in there, we're impatient with our families. We're not understanding that it's their first time doing prison time with a person doing prison time. So they don't might not know how to navigate through these things like this. um, so yeah, going in, I realized like, you know what, I still have to be strong, right? I still have to be the person that when people need someone to lean on, I still have to make sure I'm solid enough for people to lean on me and then I don't fall because if I fall, they're gonna fall also.
I think one of your superpowers is your mindset shifts. It seems like you're incredible at just changing the situation in your head so you come out on top. Like you're not,
Yes,
if you go in like I'm a victim, all this extra stuff, like you just the universe gives you that energy, But if you go out and you're like,
absolutely.
I gotta protect the people around me, I gotta do this well, then it people can feel it. People like smell it. It's incredible.
Absolutely.
Uh,
I feel that wholeheartedly. I feel like we are all part of, you know, the universe. I feel like every person, every one of us is in tune with this thing or has to be in tune with this thing, and then it will feed you appropriately. I believe that God is in every single one of us and that we're just expressions of this thing and that we move and we all have these powers. And I do believe one of mine is that it's able to help wake people up or able to show people like, hey, look what's in you. These things are in you also. You're watching me do a thing that you can also do. The reason why I'm doing it and you're not is because you're afraid. You don't need to be afraid,
Mm.
right? Like don't be afraid of this thing. Tap into it. Know that once you do the thing, it's not a coincidence, right? Like it's not a coincidence that you did it. You actually did it. Now be proud of yourself that you did something, right? Like just tap into it. But I do switch situations like that when things look uh like the glass half full, half empty thing, right? Like it's kind of like a scenario like that where a thing might look negative to a person, and I'm kind of like, well, it's just a matter of perspective, right? Or and how you're looking at it is just a reflection of how you feel inside,
mhm.
right? Like I look at us as being expressive creatures, right? Because we have facial expressions, right? So that lets you know from a person's facial expression how they're feeling inside. So if a person's feeling happy inside, their face expresses a feeling of happiness. You can say like, oh, this person looks like they're happy internally because of their expression on their face. If they feel sad, you'll see the same thing on their face. So it lets me see that we live from the inside out and we shouldn't live from the outside in, meaning we shouldn't let things that are on the outside affect how we feel internally.
Mm.
Right. So I learned that early and I realized like, you know what I have to do is look at every situation, assess these situations, know that I have the responsibility to respond accordingly. That's like responsive is my that's my ability to respond accordingly to whatever situation is going on at the time. Right. So I look at things and I'm like, you know what, this isn't, life picking on me. This is the thing that is happening like for me to be aware of a thing that I need to, correct or be better on in my life.
Mm.
Right. Everyone, this happens in everyone's life. Everyone. They I don't think a lot of people see it that way. They kind of feel like, oh, why is this always happening to me? Or why is it this? Or why is it that? It's like stop looking at like it in that sense, and you'll as you push through it, the why will actually appear to you,
Mm.
like why it's happening for you. It's not happening to you, right? You didn't just wake up, right? The cops didn't knock on the wrong door when they're at my house, right? They didn't knock on the wrong door. They were at the right house, right? And that was a consequence of my actions. So when those things happen, look how it turned out for me in the long run. I had no idea that this is how I was going to be, after doing a 7-year prison sentence, right? So let me see like everything happens for you. It helps to mold you and point you in the right direction because in order for me to get on this path, I had to be in the prison and I had to meet that woman in there in 2015 for her to plant the seed for me to be a trainer. I didn't get that on the streets. I mean, someone might say it could have happened somewhere else. We'll never know because we only know the facts are I had to be in prison to get that information. And that's how I look at things. Things have to happen. And some of us are just, I was a hard-headed person. Like you couldn't just tell me, hey, Brandon, go be a trainer because you need to prove it to me why I need to go do that. Right. Like, and so seeing how things played out, I can see like I had to be in that particular place to get that particular message at that time.
Have you talked to the woman since then?
I haven't. I actually tried to find her on Facebook, but you only know their last name.
Mm.
You never see what their first name is. And I never like to try to be unprofessional with people, even when in there, because I felt like that's their job. That's how they take care of themselves or their family. So I never want to, pry too much because they might think that I'm trying to come on to them or trying to scam them or do whatever. So I just kind of left it like that. But her last name is Staten.
Mm.
Little Puerto Rican chick or Hispanic chick, I don't know. And she was maybe 4'11". She was a tiny little person. But she was cool though. She was definitely cool.
Yeah. Yeah, she changed her life. I wonder, it sounds like she just, like, that's another heroic effort from her, right? She went into that prison and I mean, you might have been the only one, but I bet there were other people that she was trying to raise up, like, in the midst of
Yeah,
this.
and sometimes people don't.
Mhm.
Yeah, sometimes people don't get stuff like that. I I used to read the Bible a lot, and I realized that one thing what I seen was common in the Bible was that God used people to deliver messages to other people. And I realized like, oh, anytime a miracle happened, there was a person that God worked through to make that miracle happen. So I was kind of like, oh, this is a major thing. So I have to pay attention to this person here because there's a reason why she came and brought this message to me. She could have said it to anybody. Everybody works out of prison. Everybody works out of jail. Everybody. Uh, but she didn't say that to everybody that day. She said that to me on the walkway. And I was like, there's a reason she said that to me. And I just took it. I was like, okay, this is gonna be my thing now.
Mhm.
Sorry, I don't see my mom a lot. She was like my one person while I was in there that like I'm her only son that ever did anything like this. My mom's had three sons, so it's me and two of my other brothers. Um, so I was the only one to do the stuff that I did. And she was the one person that didn't give up on me while I was in there. Like the one person, like everybody else dropped off, and she believed me. Like everything I said I was going to do, she definitely believed me. And most people just said like, "Oh, that's jail talk." Everybody from jail says all this stuff, and she was just like, "Don't worry about that stuff. Do what you say you're going to do," and I did it.
Good mom.
Yeah.
Yeah. That brings me into another thought about mindset, because it sounds like when you were 25 and then in prison, you were in, like, to get all nerdy or whatever, like Carl Jung talked about people at different stages of development. And one of the stages is like after you leave home, you kind of you become like part of your community, and then you kind of take on all the values of your community. And it sounds like
Yeah.
you were like heavily entrenched in the values of your community. And then it sounds like in that moment when you read the book, you kind of went through this metamorphosis where you became individuated, Carl Jung would say, which most people are never individuated. But like it sounds like you figured out how to rise, because prison, I imagine, is kind of a place where people bring each other down a lot. So you had to figure out.
I feel like it's a place of just being stagnant,
Yeah.
and guys just get around other people to help them kind of reinforce who it is that they think that they are. And not everyone tries to be someone different because they don't know if their girl's going to stay with them if they change, or if their friends are going to stay with them if they change. And a lot of people want to be accepted. They want to be accepted by their peers. Like it's the thing that goes back to like grade school. Everybody wants to kind of do stuff that their, friends do. So they have something similar in common, and they will be cool with each other and they'll hang out with each other. I had gotten to a point where I was like, you know what, I don't care. Right. Like I'm going to be uh exactly how I want to be. If a person doesn't like it, that's okay. Right. Like there's gonna be plenty of people that do. And I'm not trying to make people like me. I'm not trying to do any of that. I'm just going to, you know, be what I think is the best version of me. Right? I want to do everything that I want to do on my time, right? Like I want to talk how I want to talk. I want to be one of the things that really helped me was being extremely honest with everyone. Because I'm going to be like brutally honest, right? Not to the point of being rude, but to the point where I was like, you know what? They'll either appreciate my honesty, and if not, they'll once they wisen up, they'll realize that I was actually a true person now. But I didn't really see a lot of guys like breaking each other down. It's more of a thing of staying in the same place. And I noticed the administration does a thing to where they give you a bunch of stuff to try to make you feel comfortable, like a tablet, phone calls. I was on a unit that you played Xbox. They had Xbox, they had uh, ping pong, and I think they had pool tables. I was kind of like, I don't want any of this stuff, right? You trying to make me feel comfortable being in here, right? Like this isn't my home, right? So anytime they would say, "Where's your cell at?" I'm like, I don't live here. Or they have a thing of saying, "Where do you live?" And I'm like, I live in, Chester County. I don't live in, this isn't my cell. This is the cell that you, you know, like designed for me to stay in, but it's not mine, right? Like I keep it clean because I help to, take care of other people's stuff, right? Like I don't mistreat my stuff. I'm not going to mistreat your stuff, right? And that was just my mindset with things like that. So I think that they give guys things in there, knowing that maybe 1%, maybe half of 1% come out of there with a true plan, ready to stay out of there, and everything else will pacify these men, and they'll never change, and they'll come home and do the same thing, and it just keeps feeding that system. I think if guys knew to push back against that, right? To not worry about if your girls want to stay with you, if your friends want to stay with you. Like you need to be the best version of you for your, especially those of us that have children. Be the best version of you for your children, right? Like, one thing about kids, they love their parents regardless. Like as long as you didn't do anything to harm their physical lives or their bodies, children will love you regardless. Like they don't care. They don't care that you went to prison. Just stay home for them once you're home, right? Like stay home for them. And I think if guys just put everything to the side and say, like, I have humans that occupy Earth. That's how I refer to my sons. I'm like, I have humans that occupy Earth. That's a major responsibility. You can either raise like a serial killer or like the next, world
Yeah.
leader. Uh, it's a major responsibility. So I was like, I have to do it for them. These boys share my bloodline, right? They have my name. So I have to make sure that, how I am, they either can say, like, I want to be like my dad, or I'll never want to be like my dad. Right. Like, and I would rather them be like me in the sense of not going to prison because if just because I went and turned out like this doesn't mean your story's going to be the same way.
Mm.
Right. Like I'd like them to see like, to be people that know like you can always persevere, you can always get through tough times are going to happen, but it's going to happen to make you tough, right? To make you stronger because there's a thing that's prepared for you later on that requires you to have this, sort of tough skin or to have this strong mindset. So yeah,
I think both genders of kids, but also especially it seems like young boys really need to see a father figure. Like they need to understand what a good man looks
yes,
like. Because
absolutely, I agree.
even if they're like, oh, I don't want to be like my dad. Well, you could be like a million other crappy people, right? Like, but if you say I want to be like my dad because he's amazing,
Right.
it's like there's, it's like you're modeling what a good man looks like instead of them having to go figure it out for themselves and make all these mistakes and you know.
And that's what I had to do. I had to figure out how to be a man, right? Like I know my dad, and my dad's a good guy. Most people would say that they might say he wasn't because he wasn't around, but it's the life lessons I got from him when we were around each other, the things that he would tell me about. And that's one thing I really love him for the most. He never like sugarcoated anything. He never played with anything. He never lied to me about his past or anything like that. But his absence helped me figure it out on my own, which helped me, right? Like I don't consider my dad a deadbeat dad. I consider him a man that did what he thought he needed to do, right? And having to figure it out was a blessing. Myself and one of the best people I know today, his name's Leon, a really good friend of mine. We were together throughout this entire process as young men, just trying to figure out how to become a man, right? How to figure out how to be a man. So we grew like brothers together, and we still talk to this day. It's been over 20 years.
Yeah.
And just navigating the earth and it's like trial and error. You do a thing, you realize like, oh, okay, don't do that. Right? Like don't do that again. And done a lot of experimenting, you do drugs, you get super drunk, you do all these things at such a really young age. And you realize like, okay, that's not healthy to do. Right. Don't do that. And we would hold each other accountable for things as as friends. If we knew that we were on probation, it was like, hey, you can't smoke because you're gonna get locked up. Like that's how close of friends, that's how our relationship was. Um, so yeah, boys definitely need and definitely both children do. I mean, I've seen these studies done that show like boys or children alone, both genders do, or I don't know if it's safe to say both genders. I guess there's
Uh,
multiple genders
you
now.
say whatever you want, man.
I'm not yeah. I'm still working on that. I've only been home 4 years. This is a new thing to me. It's a new concept to understand. Um, I've seen the studies that show that children do worse in single mother homes and single homes with just the mother versus single homes with just the father.
Mhm.
And I was like, wow, that's a wild thing. Not saying that, you know, there's anything wrong with women because I didn't run the test, right? Like I just look up what's been done. So that's why once I came home, I was on a journey. Like I have to do this gym thing because I said I was going to do it. I got to stay true to my word, and I need my sons. I have to get my sons with me. And once my position started looking better, that's the first thing I did.
Mm,
Um, so my youngest son lives with me now, and my oldest boy's on the way. Or
amazing.
son's on the way, and that's just it's just it's about to me it's about them. Uh, it's about me also, but definitely about them and the impact that I have on them, and then the impact that they're going to have on the world.
Mm. I want to clarify just for anyone listening. Like, I think women also need, like, girls also need fathers. I just think men,
Absolutely,
like, little boys model what a man looks like so they figure out how they can react. And I think a lot of times, this is all generalizing, but I think a lot of times girls will model maybe what their future partners are going to look like or how they should be treated or whatever, from their
yes.
fathers and a
That's
lot of other
that's
stuff too. But
that's
yeah.
part of what some of these studies say, that when young girls don't have a positive male role model in their lives, that they tend to make poor relationship choices, because they don't necessarily know what to look for in a partner, right? So they tend to make poor choices when it comes to that. Both children make uh, poor choices when it comes to school, career path, and like partner choices. Decision making is absolutely affected when there's no man around. When there's no father around, there's absolutely their decision making is just done. And we already know, like, kids are still learning. Kids are learning for sure. So both absolutely they need both parents for sure, because it shows the duality that they have. It shows that, like, both play a role. I should do this experiment with my niece and nephew and my youngest son. Because I would tell them, like, you be appreciative to both parents, right? Because you absolutely need both. So what I would do with them is have them stand across the room and then walk toward me. And they do it. And I'm like, how easy was that? Hey, like, it was easy. I just walked over here. I was like, cool. Go back across the room. And one leg was named mom, the other leg was named dad. Then I'd say, now walk across the room again, but take one leg, lift one leg up and still get over here. And they'd have to hop over. I mean, now how easy was that? It was a lot harder. I'm like, that's what life is like when you don't have both parents in the life. You have both, it's easier to walk across. It's easier to get things done. When you just have one person trying to do all the work of both, it's a lot harder to get these things done. So you need both people, whether it's a step parent, regardless of what it is, you need both of those roles played. Whether people call themselves husbands, wives, man, woman, whatever it is, children need to see both sides of a thing working together as a team to get a thing done.
Mm.
Right? Because a lot of times when you see people that grow up in these single parent households, and if they grow with their mom, they end up being resentful towards men. If they grow with their dads, they tend to being resentful towards women. And it's like, that's not what it's designed to do. Right? Like, you need those things to have stability in the household, like to have stability, like within the mind of a person in general.
Mm. And even so, I don't know this for sure. I just know a handful of like dads who weren't necessarily in their kids' lives as much as they could have been. And I think to me it seems like all these guys are kind of motivated by shame. Um
Mm,
and like I think even just being in your kid's life, even if you're not can't be always there, or even if you don't feel like you're the perfect father, like it's just or mother, obviously I just see more fathers than mothers doing this, but like it's so
yeah,
important just to be in their lives and just show up the best you can and as often as you can. Like, even someone who's only sometimes in their kid's life, it's just so much better than not being in your kid's life. But that's
yeah,
I'm on my
absolutely.
soapbox.
No, no, it's good. I
Yeah.
absolutely agree with you. I think some people would think, like, well, I'm not around them every week anyway. Trust me. When I first came home, I was on this path to do this. I didn't see my sons a lot at all, and it beat me up a lot. But I was like, you know what? I'm on this journey.
Mm.
And they'll see later on, as once they mature, they'll see, like, my dad did this thing. He told us he was going to do this. And I sat with them and told them the thing that was challenging was the thing I have to use in order to build this thing, the resource I have to use in order to build this thing is also the resource that takes away from them, which was time. right? I needed to put so much time into building the company, but it also was going to take time away from them, right? So I was like, I have to figure out the balance in this thing, regardless of whether it's, and I think when people hear balance, they think of a thing being even, right? When you're an entrepreneur, that's not true, right? There's no work-life balance. There's no even amount of time spent with family and with creating your company and building your company. So I'm a quality time person. It's not the amount of time we spend together. It's what we do with the time that we have, right? So if we're together and we have a phenomenal time together, we have the greatest time, and we only spend 2 hours, you think 2 hours of great quality time supersedes 10 hours of us just sitting in the same room on our phones together,
Mm.
right? We weren't we were just present in the room, right? We could right now, like, we can sit down here and play Monopoly, right? We can sit down here and do a thing like that and have a great time, or we can just sit in a room together
Mm.
and spend 10 hours together, just sitting in the room, doing absolutely nothing, not engaging with each other, nothing like that. Yeah, you spent a lot of time, but you did nothing with it. You didn't talk to them. You didn't give them any life lessons. That's one thing I believe that parents should do. And I think we confuse, and I'd say we, because, I'm a parent also, some people confuse raising a child with providing for a child, right? Raising them isn't making sure that they have food to eat, clothes, and a place to live. That's providing for them. Raising them is the life lessons and from the experience that you actually gained to share with them, so they can actually learn some stuff. Because if you haven't experienced anything, you're useless to them. You can't tell them anything. You can't do it. If you lived in a bubble your entire life, you can't tell them. What do you want to tell them?
Mm.
Stay in the bubble. Don't go out of the bubble. It's not safe out there, right? And what happens if they choose to walk out of the bubble one day? They're going to be at a great disadvantage. You didn't actually help them. You just taught them to be afraid, or you taught them to be scared, right? If every human since we evolved lived that way, none of us would be here.
Mhm.
Like absolutely not. So I think like there needs to be the people that, uh, whether it's a man or a woman, don't feel ashamed, right? You did what you did,
Mm.
right? Like you do what you do. I don't feel any bit ashamed going to prison. I don't feel guilty. I don't feel any of that. I'm like, I did what I did. All right. I don't owe them. My sons would tell, if they were able to talk to you right now, they would tell you, like, I'm hard. I'm like, I don't owe you anything. I actually gave you the greatest gift anyone could ever give, and that's life. So you owe me now, right? And all they owe me is doing something with the life that they have. That's it. And a Porsche. But that's small.
That's all. That's
That's a
all.
small thing. I'm a Porsche fan. That's a small thing.
Yeah.
Porsche
One Porsche from
Panamera,
each kid, right?
one Porsche from each
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
It's cool, right? That is it. I'm like, because if you can afford to buy me one, that means you should be able to afford 10 of them.
Yeah.
That is it. I'm like, you do something and I'm on them. Like, I'm talking like daily. I don't tell them what they're going to do as far as their career choice, but I'm like, I gave you life. You better do something with it, like ASAP. Like, do something with it. I looked this thing up before, and it said our chances of being born were like 1 in 400 trillion.
Yeah.
What? Like, that means we're looking at each other and like we were supposed to be here,
Yeah.
right? Like, there's a ton of science that goes behind stuff like that. But just know, like, there could be a lot more people here, and there's not. But we're here right now, right? Like, this is a wild thing, right? So I look at that, like, we had, knowing that there's that chance that we remember, our parents had to meet, our parents had to be born, our parents had to meet, and our parents had to choose to have children, and we had to live in our moms and go full term and not die. Like, what's the, like, so you were born for what reason, right? Like
We
you had to be born for a reason. See what I'm saying?
we owe it to the 400 trillion people who didn't make it out into the world.
Yeah. So I agree. I'm like, I have to do something with the life I have.
I want to switch back to your story for a bit. I'm wondering what it was like when you first got out of prison.
It was COVID,
Oh,
so
shit.
you couldn't do anything. You couldn't do anything. It was COVID, and they put me on house arrest also. So I was on electronic home monitoring also. So I could only sit in the house, and I was so bored. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to study. I left prison with about like 250, 300 pounds of books. That's the only thing I left with. I didn't want anything else. I left with only textbooks, and I guess people refer to them as like self-help books. That's all I wanted. I'm not a fictional reader. I'm not anything. Or I read. I like to read like autobiographies. I like to read about people. Um, I came home and I was like, okay, I need to put this plan into action. But I had no money. I had $110, and I went to Walmart and I was like, oh, stuff's far more expensive than it is in jail. Like, how am I supposed to make the $110 buy me a gym? But I couldn't. I was like, okay, I needed to buy stuff because I had gotten bigger since being in jail. So I was like, t-shirts, boxers, socks, and that was it. So I had, good thing I made sure I'd written my plan down. Um, but it was in my mind. I had my plan written down in my mind. So when I tell people this was all written down, I just remember I told you before, I'm really good at retaining information. I have my entire plan in my mind. There's no guessing with it. There's nothing. I had 7 years to plan it.
Mm.
I had 7 years to do it. So came home. I started training in a gym in about August of 2020, and I took off. I literally took off from there. Uh, the people I trained, the gym was running a like transformation competition thing, and uh, three of the five people I trained, and one of the
Wow.
girls won, and people were like, "Oh, there's a trainer that actually gets people results because not many trainers get people results." um, Not many good there's a lot of certified traders. There's not a lot of qualified trainers. I would probably say it better like that. So yeah, just started working and training, and that it became my whole day. I was like, that's what I'm going to do. I didn't, I had gotten out of the relationship that I was in because I realized that even though she's a good person, who she wasn't compatible with who I was at that time. I was like, if we would have met each other on a dating app, we would have never swiped on each other because we just weren't compatible. And that's just what it was. So I focused all my time and attention on making sure that branding was good, that branding was, known for getting results and doing being the best at what he did and being knowledgeable and being kind and being friendly to people. And that's one thing that helps me out now, that when new people walk into the gym for the first time, they feel welcome. They feel like they're a part of the thing that we're building right now. They're not just dollar signs to me. I like to know everybody that comes in the gym. I like to greet everyone that comes into the gym.
Mm.
Like still to this day, I greet every single person that walks into the gym.
Mm. There's this
So
book,
yeah, it was just
Gym Lunch by Alex Hormozy, that I really like, and he talks about
yeah, I
how.
have it.
Oh, nice, nice. I
Yeah,
recommended it to you, and now you have it. Awesome.
yeah.
Have you started it?
I read it a while. I had it for
Oh,
a while.
you've read it. Oh, okay, okay. You've read it for a while. Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. And so the thing that helps with gym launch is you have to read the book and watch the YouTubes at the same time
Yeah.
because it'll break it down for you. I learned this, the hard way. I read through it and I was like, it was hard for me to kind of like get what they were saying. And then once you watch the YouTubes, and the YouTubes are like an hour, 2 hours
Yeah.
long, but when you're trying to get into a thing, you should educate yourself on itself the most. And that's what I did. I read their book and I was like, okay, cool. Their book helped, but there's a book that I've read that really helped called Influence. That book
Was that
really
Robert
helped out a
Cialdini?
lot.
The
I believe it is.
yeah,
It's
I
I
read that
forget
one
the
too.
author because it was new to me. I had heard it from a man named Myron Golden. I used to watch a lot of his YouTubes, and he was talking about how it really helped him out a lot.
Mm.
And so I was like, okay, I'm going to get it. I tend to watch a lot of like wealthy people,
Yeah, of course.
or I like this Jewish podcast, Living L'Chaim, I think it's pronounced.
Yeah,
I watched
dude.
this Jewish
Yeah,
podcast,
I like them.
and they put me on. Yeah, they put me on game. They put me on a lot of game. I like
Yeah.
those guys,
I'm
and
I'm Jewish as well, so I love
oh
them.
yeah,
I'm a big fan. I want to have them on one day. It's like a goal.
you should. Those guys are the first one I watched was with Neftali Horowitz,
Yep.
a guy from like Chase, and I watched and from watching him that one time, I watched it like 3 times in a row. I changed how I did a lot of things. I figured like, what's the use of knowledge if you can't apply it? You have to apply it to see if it works, and it worked. And I mean, it was the simplest thing. It was stop buying coffee from like Starbucks, like make it at your house. It costs you far less. And so I do this. I watch these people, and I'm like, okay, let me apply it. Let me see what they have. What's going on with them, or is this like good information or is it bad information? And I haven't been steered wrong at all. So yeah, I didn't know you were Jewish though. I
Yeah.
got to know you were Jewish.
Yeah. Uh, um, the hat married women wear hats in Judaism.
Ah,
I mean anyone could wear a hat
people
though.
ask me if I'm Jewish because I wear the Star of David. So people ask.
Nice.
It's a crazy conversation starter. Like people are like, "Oh, you're Jewish," or this, and I'm like, "No, I'm Brandon," but you know, um, I love a lot of the meanings of what the Star of David represents, and I'm a person that just loves to know that people believe in the thing,
What does it
and if
represent
it
to you?
helps them, it helps them. I like one of the meanings of it that it was God reaching down to man and man reaching up to God, right? But I also like that I don't know. I feel like I'm a major fan of triangles first. So I love that it's each triangle has 3 points on it. I was born on the 3rd of January. Um, Leo mom said I was born at 3:03, and I was in room 3303.
Wow.
And so this all these threes kind of like it always felt good about triangles. So I was kind of like that was just like my thing. But I learned some about Judaism. I learned while I was away, and I was like, if I could get into a religion, or if I would get into a religion, I was like, I think that would be for me for sure.
It's a
I
yeah.
like the community of those people.
It's a
I
good
like
one,
a
dude.
community of
It's
people.
amazing. Like
Yeah.
I was at a funeral event last night, and one of the guys there is the director of this. I won't name it, but like it's a homeless outreach program, and just like while he's there, he's talking to people, and he's like actively trying to do stuff for his community when he's there. He's kind of they're just chattering about like how do we get people off the streets more. Like Judaism is so
Yeah.
focused on community and the Jewish community kind of primarily, but like he's helping anyone who comes through his door. He's trying to get them
Right.
food, he's trying to get them shelter, get them off drugs. Like I think Judaism is kind of I think a lot of religions maybe used to be like this, but Judaism has kept it in that they're so concerned about keeping the community stable, teaching people right, like just so focused on bringing people up the right way so they have people around them all the time. So when you're in a crisis, when someone dies, people come and they help you, and there's rituals for that. And when you get married, people are there, and every Saturday
I know.
you have to walk to synagogue. And so you walk to synagogue, that means that you have to live within walking distance of everyone around you. Pretty much everyone you know
Right.
lives within walking distance. And like that helps, people don't get depressed when there's people around them that they can just walk over to.
Right.
It's amazing. It's a beautiful
Right.
religion.
I definitely I seen that, and I was like, I like that. Once I took a theology course once, and I wanted to know about it. I was like, I need to know. You don't meet many Jewish people in prison though. At least I didn't meet many Jewish people in prison. I didn't meet many Hindu people either. I like those two religions the most. Um, I like that, and I like their like way of being. I'm like I told you before, I'm a quality time person, so I like the community aspect of things. Um, so and then watching, I grew up. I guess my family wanted to raise us up Christian. My brother's a reverend, and I don't know. I'd prefer like let me choose what I get to be. Don't tell me what I'm going to be. Right? Most people that I've met, they can't tell you why they're whatever you know why they're in whatever system of belief they're in, besides the fact that their parents were that thing and grew them up in that thing. And it's like, right, so you never reasoned yourself into it, right? You were just like how everyone's mom is the best cook, right? Because you grew up eating her food, right? Like that's why. Uh so and there's nothing wrong with it. I think that, if it works for you and you're a better person for it. Absolutely, that's fine. I want to be able to choose what I am. I don't want to, if I did get into religions like that, I just like the teachings of a lot of things. Right? I like stuff like that. Um,
Mm.
so yeah, I like stuff like that.
Yeah. So I'm interested in how you created your gym.
So I had so many corny names for it before, and I just didn't like any of the names for it. And so Morphed is actually an acronym for motivating others with respect, persistence, honesty, and trust. So it's actually an acronym. And because I like acronyms, I like stuff like that. And I was like, okay, I saved up like it was $4,300. And I remember being with a friend of mine I spoke about earlier, Leon, and man, I wish I was further along than I'm at right now. I got $4,300 saved up. And he pulls his phone out and he looks this thing up and he shows me this stat. And this was 2021. And it was like the average American family doesn't have like $4,000, $5,000 in an emergency savings. He's like, you saved more money in a year being home from prison than the average American family has saved up. It's like you're in a pretty good position. And I was like, man, he's right. So I had gotten the opportunity to get, my own place I couldn't find anywhere, right? And I know nothing about it. I don't know anything about like shopping for real estate or anything like that. Then I've got felonies and I've got all these things. I'm like, I don't know how this is going to happen, but I never think I can't do anything. But I guess that's like one of the definitions of confidence, right? Like one of the things that go into confidence. I don't think I can't do anything. I think everything is possible. Um, there's things I won't do because like I won't try to fly because I don't have the things on my body that require flight. Right. Like, um, so I called around, had other people call around for me, and the building that we're in, there was one of the units for rent, and it was $1,200. And they were like, we need two securities and one payment. And I was like, okay, cool. So, and what that ended up being was 3,600. That ended up being $3,600.
Wow.
Whoa, whoa, hold on.
Oh, good.
Uh,
That's what editing
how's
is
it?
for.
How's it doing? We're trying to, what's going on? It's trying to take my screen. So, yeah, plug my phone in. That's probably. Just give me a second for some. Thank you. Um, so yeah, I had to give them 3,600 of the money I had saved up, and I was like, all right. I didn't even think twice about it. I was like, you need 3,600? Cool. Went to the bank, grabbed 3,600 out on like a cashier's check, gave it to them. But I had negotiated for a few free months. And I was like, cool, we're gonna do this thing. I had like no equipment. Like I had some like barbells, like some slam balls, some weights, like some plates, and some dumbbells, like some 10, some 15, and some 20s. And I was like, cool. I had no flooring for it. I had nothing for it. And I had a friend of mine, I was like, hey, could you I was trying to figure out how to get loans. And it took me some time to figure out that felons can't get loans. But it took me a long time to figure it out. And a lot of hits on my credit score, which already wasn't good. So um talked to friends of mine that were close, and they were like, hey, I'll do this for you, just train me to pay it off. I was like, absolutely, let's do that. So got the floor, and my first few months, my first like maybe 6 7 months, I had no people to train to make money from, but I still had to pay $1,200 in rent every month. And it took some time. It definitely took some time to build it up. I mean, I went a long time. I mean, most entrepreneurs will tell you the same thing. It's like a balancing act of trying to pay bills and continue to keep your thing up and running. And I'm sure you see now, I'm not a quitter. I'm not a person that gives up easily, especially after being through what I've been through, like making it through those things. I had the confidence to like, what, I'll get through this stuff like for sure. So, um, just wrote it out, just toughed it out. I'd be late on rent or for the building to pay rent at the house, or I'd be late on rent at the house to pay rent at the building. I had gotten so far back in car payments, I had gotten a notice for repossession, and I'm like, okay, let me see how much money I have, and then I was like, all right, let me make sure me pay my car off, let me pay the money for the car so it doesn't get repossessed, and then rinse and repeat, and just keep doing the same thing over and over. And that's what it was. It was really like a lot of, just toughing it out, knowing like, like you got to do these things. I think, when you see people in these positions, not everyone's willing to tell you that because they don't want to like take a hit to their ego. Right. But I think it's important to show people like the full thing, right? It's important to tell them the full story. Like, hey, it wasn't always good, right? Don't give them the Instagram version of the thing to where like everything was always good all the time. Like it never looked ugly, right? Like, and it definitely did. Anyone that's building a company will tell you, like, they'll tell you the same thing. That stuff's a challenge. And I believe that success is designed or to look like, temporary failure or momentary failure just to see if you're going to quit. Because if you do, it wasn't for you.
Yeah.
You weren't going to be successful anyway. Because anytime a thing comes up that's challenging, you give up. Right. So success isn't going to be for you because you give up when challenging things happen. And so when I notice things like that, I'm like, okay, this thing's happening. I got to figure it out. So it's like a juggling act, right? And yeah, we built it. Once I started to understand Google, really, really good friend of mine named Frank, he just was like, hey, let me show you how to, operate Google over chicken cheesesteaks and like wine or something. He introduced me to wine. Really good guy. And over chicken cheesesteak. He showed me how to operate Google. And I didn't think Google like really meant a thing. And it did, and it helped because then it let people see how to find me.
So what did you use? Did you learn about Google SEO, or did you like buy
Yeah,
Google ads?
no, we didn't do any ads, which is wild. Just social media and Google, and I realized that Google had like their own social media type platform. And what I learned like by just reading a lot about what Google actually does, like it's definitely like the SEO is most people will create their Google page and never do anything on it. Google, the more active you are on it, the more it searches out things that has your name on it. So half the stuff that people come across on our Google page or on Google when they Google us, I didn't add it on there. Google goes and finds it everywhere on its own because I make sure to continue to post photos or post videos on Google. I just add photos. That's all I do. Google went and found the Instagram page, the Facebook page, finds any pictures of me that are on social media or on the internet anywhere, and it just grabs me and then puts. So when people type more fitness in, uh, a post that I might have put up, it grabs anything. A post that a person might have put up, it grabs anything. So I realized like you have to be active on Google also for Google to actually do its job, and that's free. That was a free service. I don't pay anything for that. I just post. I just make sure to post. That's pretty much all it is. And shout out to Google. It's a major
Yeah,
part.
shout out to Google. Yeah, that's a huge one. Like, they're called like backlinks for anyone who doesn't know. So, if like social media has its own like class of backlinks, I think they're less like a lot of people post on social media, so I think they're like less strong. Except
Okay.
maybe really like a giant influencer like Elon Musk tweets about you, and I'm sure you'll get more. But like if you
I'm
get on
reading
like
his book
news,
now.
yeah. Oh, I haven't read it yet. I'm excited to.
I'm reading his
But
book now, man. Shout out to Elon
yeah,
Musk, man. He's a major guy.
he's a bit. Shout out to Elon Musk.
Yeah. I'm like really
if
interested
you
in him, man.
if you need a personal trainer, I know a guy, Elon.
Yeah. Like shout out, hit me up, Elon. Sure.
Yeah. Um, but like yeah, news. Like if any like news articles post about you, any like big websites and stuff, like Google loves that shit. So that like they look for as many backlinks as possible. They always look for like people hack the backlink system. So they like
Yeah.
you find if you wanted to kind of hack the system, you would like find stuff related to fitness, like supplement companies, and then you would have them like make a blog featuring morphed fitness because Google's like, okay, supplements that's similar to gym equipment, which is similar to this gym. So
Right.
like bodybuilders, and they all like just link morphed fitness somewhere or talk about it or whatever, and then that's how like people get
That's crazy. I didn't
on
know
the
that.
top of SEO. Yeah, it's pretty
That's
crazy.
major.
It's wild.
That's definitely a major
Yeah,
thing. Yeah.
it's always changing.
Yeah, understanding that
Yeah,
stuff is that's wild. That's some wild
yeah,
stuff.
yeah. But I mean, word of mouth is like, it sounds like you just got a lot of word of mouth as well,
Yeah,
which
word
is
of
the
mouth is
most
good.
valuable.
Yeah, because I just happened to put it in a place. I knew there wasn't a gym out here. Now we have like the regular commercial style gyms, like the regular gyms that most people know. It's $10 a month or $20 a month. Um, but I was kind of like, nobody wants to live there for real. Like that's where you go to work out and not be held accountable, right? Like I was like, I want to make a place where people come train and are held accountable, but also they actually want to be there. Like they actually want to record content there. And like, I'm gonna make it, I'm gonna black the whole gym out. I'm gonna just black it out. So blacked all the walls out and got this super awesome girl that I trained. Her name's Christina. Um, and maybe we can like maybe try to like put her social media tag on here. She's actually a tattoo artist. She paints these murals for us on the wall. So we got Ronnie Coleman on one
Oh,
wall, and she's doing Kobe Bryant now. So I'm a major Kobe Bryant fan. Um, Next is Conor McGregor. Everybody whose mindset I rock with, they're going on the wall. Um, so she paints these like grayscale sort of murals on the wall. And they're probably like maybe 12 feet high. They're pretty big murals. And she goes from doing tattoos where like these things are small, they're on people's arms, to doing these massive murals for us. It's the first thing she's ever done in her life like this. Um, but I like to be a person that can help bring out, your true talent. Like I like to be that person, right? That's like I'm part of the process, right? And I hope she can make like a major business out of this. I mean, And when people see her work, they're like, this is like amazing. Um, but yeah, so we're doing that. And I handpick all the machines that I get in there that I put in there because I don't want to just have anything, right? Like I've been in tons of gyms. Some of the stuff I'm like, I'll never use it. I'll never
Yeah.
use stuff like that. Like who's going like I'm not going to the gym to use a 4-weight neck machine. Like, why would I do that? Why would I pay for a neck machine? Like, why would I pay for an ab machine? You just do abs on the floor. People have been doing abs before they made a machine for it, right? So why would I pay for those? I just pick machines I know to be effective. I know to really like build the body. And of course, it doesn't need to be super expensive, right? Like people have been building bodies with far less stuff. The thing that helps you build your body or get the physique that you want is consistency. It's not the equipment. Right? You just got to
I'm
show up every day.
suspicious. I'm suspicious of machines. Like I'm not like a crazy weightlifter. I like lift
Yeah,
weights, but I'm not, I'm not a bodybuilder or anything. But like those machines, they take away a lot of the natural. The body's always balancing stuff, and so when you're
yeah,
lifting up a bar, it's
yeah,
balancing you naturally. You're engaging your
right,
abs. But if you're just like isolating in a machine, it does all the work for
yeah,
you. And I think you're training all the big muscles that lift stuff, but you're not training all the little muscles
yeah,
that balance you. And then when the little muscles aren't trained, they get injured. I think that's why so many people get
yes,
injuries because they're not actually like moving their whole body together. They only care
that's
about the
it.
power.
You have to balance it out. That's what fitness is. Like cardio, calisthenics, strength training, um, all those things together. You can't just use machines. We've done this before as like an experiment, right? Just had a friend of mine use only machines. Wow, and not even like plate loaded machines. Right? Plate loaded machines tend to have a little bit better range of motion, but some of the selectorized machines. So he was only using selectorized machines. He did this for about, I think it was like 120 days. He was so much weaker by the time he started up again. His stability in his dumbbell press, he used to be able to dumbbell press a lot. By the time we got through the 120 days, he could barely press the 80s and the 90s. His arms were shaking like ridiculously because his body lost the ability to be able to stabilize properly. So we do like a full, well-rounded approach. Like when it comes to like me training the classes, I actually incorporate the machines into the group training classes because most people go to gyms, they see machines, and they're super intimidated by them. Some people, the
Mhm.
machines are taller than them, so they see it and they're like, I don't know anything about this, so I'm just going to stay away from it. I'm just going to go get on the treadmill and walk. And one thing I tell people, I'm like, you walk to your car to get here, walked out of like from your car into the building, and then you walk to the treadmill. That lets you know that walking is like free. Right? You can walk in the neighborhood. Don't pay a person a gym membership to go walk. Right? Like you're just giving your money away. Look up the importance of resistance training because strength training now, it used to be like taboo for women to strength train, but now the science is out on like the benefits of strength training and why everyone should be strength training, the effect it has on your bones, on your muscles, on your uh how you think, right? On how you feel about yourself, right? All those things, do that and walk. Like walk also, right? Like do all those things, but definitely don't just use machines, right? Like use dumbbells. The most versatile piece of equipment you can get in the gym is dumbbells, right? Like you don't
Mm.
even have to go super heavy on dumbbells. If you do what's called time under tension, you can be lifting 15s and feel like you're lifting 50s, right? Because most people they'll grab a heavy weight, they'll do 10 reps and it lasts, 12 seconds, 15 seconds. And they're like, all right, I did 12 reps. I used 50 still. Yeah. And they'll feel good about themselves. Or I'm like, hey, grab those 15s and do 12 reps, but we're going to take 40 seconds. We want to take a minute to do 12 reps. Then you're like, oh, that was so much harder, right? You feel like you used 100 by the time you get done doing your set, right? Because it's a time under tension thing. And I think that's the thing that most people forget when it comes to training. They just want to go in and crank out reps and crank out sets. And their training tends to be more volume based versus focused, right? They're not necessarily, they're thinking about lifting heavy. You're not concerned about thinking about the muscle contraction. You're just trying not to be crushed by the weight. Or you're just ego lifting. You're just in the gym lifting some super heavy stuff that you probably don't need to be
What's the
lifting.
advantage of time under tension?
Time under tension is actually a thing that they showed that actually helps increase your muscle size versus lifting. If you lift heavy weights, you're going to get stronger. S- particular or specific amount of reps and a particular amount of weight for a particular amount of time has been shown to gain hypertrophy, which is muscle strength. I mean, muscle growth, right? Usually, a bigger muscle is a stronger muscle, or a stronger muscle is a bigger muscle. Um, but there are people that they're just genetically large people, but that doesn't mean that they're strong, right? They just have a bigger body size than most people, right? Because muscle can also be dense, right? So you can have, I mean, anyone that knows farmers, farmers are functionally strong people. They might not be able to bench press a lot, but they can move some stuff that most bodybuilders could never move a day in their lives. Um, so time under tension is one of those things that everyone should be adding into their training, right? It's more like tempo training, right? Where you'll take like 3 to 5 seconds on the negative, a quick pause, and same
So
thing.
down is the negative?
Down is the negative. So say we use bicep curls for an example, right? You take 3 to 5 seconds to get the weight down, pause for a second, same thing, 3 to 5 seconds to get the weight up. Now,
Hmm.
you try 10 reps that way, or with the same weight, try 10 reps without that. You want to see that the 10 reps where you did that time under tension is far harder than the 10 reps you just cranked out, right? You'll be able to do 10 sets of 10 if you just knock it out like that, right? But that time under tension, that really matters. So, and even in that, mix it up, right? Have some time under tension sets, have some sets where you just go ahead and knock the sets out, right? Like always mix it up, always have like a variety of things, but always track what you're doing also, so you know what works, right? So you know what you did.
So there's different muscle fibers, right?
Yeah.
And is it true that like if I do, like, let's say I'm doing bench press and I'm like benching really fast up,
Yeah.
it's a different muscle fiber, right? Than if I go really slowly
They
up.
call them
Is that
they call
correct?
them they call them like fast twitch. You're still using the same muscle fibers though. You're
Okay.
just training them. Most people call them or say like if you're going to train fast twitch, you should train them according to the name, right? So if you're
Mm.
training fast twitch muscle fibers, move them faster, and that's more for like explosiveness, right? Um, time under tension kind of goes against that. It's kind of like, and even though you're going to be training those faster as muscle fibers, you're going to train them slowly, right? Like unless you're one of those athletes that needs to produce a high level of power output, like Olympic lifters, right? Because
Mm.
they're not going to, that weight that they're moving doesn't require, like you don't need to move that slowly because you'll never be able to lift it, right? It's one thing about like the faster you move a weight, the easier it is for you to move, right? So that's where the explosion um, or the power output comes when it comes to those particular type of athletes.
I like to do jujitsu, so it's a combination. You definitely want the explosion. You need the
Yes,
explosion, but also oftentimes you're holding a position for a really long time and just
mhm,
trying not to give out. And so I guess I would be doing a lot of explosive fast twitches and also like isometrics or
right.
maybe
So
just very slow. Yeah.
you're doing a lot more. It's more of like an endurance type of thing, right? Like so you want to be training not only, and this is the wild thing. Uh, when you're training for power, your rep range is lower and the weight is higher. And when you're training for strength, it's similar. The rep range is lower and the weight is higher.
So when
Right?
you say rep range, I just want to clarify, you mean the amount of reps I do and not the range of motion, right?
Well, no, the well, just the amount of reps
Yeah, the
that
amount of
you do.
reps. Yeah.
It's just rep ranges like 1 to 5 will be your range,
Mm,
right? Versus if you're training for endurance, you're talking like 15 plus reps at
mm,
shorter rest periods. Right. So even though with power and strength having comparable rep ranges, you could be training for two different things. One, you could be training for strength. The other, you can be training for power, like for your power output. Um, and then hypertrophy is kind of like this sweet, like muscle growth is like this sweet spot in between. You're talking like 6 to 12, 13 reps.
mm,
That's but that also requires even with strength. Strength is a time under tension thing, also, right? You don't necessarily just want to move it down and up. And when you think about powerlifters, they're taught to lift according to the cues that they get. Right? They lift, they drop the weight down, they have to pause until the person tells them to lift it, right? And they lift after. So you need to be a well balanced athlete when it comes to like these competitive sports, like powerlifting, Olympic lifting, things like that.
mm.
So
So how you are a it seems like you're an amazing motivator. It seems like you're really good at getting people to um to follow through with their goals. How do you do that? What is your can you give any tips for anyone who wants to become a leader in the future and motivate people?
yeah, I think the best way to motivate people and to help motivate people, one thing at least that I do is just be straight up with people, just be upfront with people, right?
Mm,
Like uh, if it's in the gym, right? The thing that I do when it comes to motivating people is I have to be honest with them, right? Uh, so if a person's overweight, um, you you take the route of a doctor, right? A doctor doesn't feel any way about telling a person, "Hey, you're overweight," and he's not body shaming you. He or she's not body shaming you. They're telling you based on the facts that they have. You're overweight. They only care because it's not healthy for you, right? And they're telling you that it's not healthy. I know this because I know family members that are the same way, right? What people tend to forget is like your doctor is going to tell you you have to diet and exercise.
mm,
And then the person that you're going to send you to, because your doctor's not going to write you an exercise program and a nutrition program. They're going to tell you should go to the gym and probably hire a trainer, which is going to be myself or one of my counterparts, a person that does what I do, a qualified person that does what I do. So if we tell you, hey, you're overweight and you're out of shape, we're not body shaming you either. We're actually telling you the truth. And now you know that you got two people that care about your well being. Right. So it's like you should care about it also because your family needs you around. Right. And I found that just being honest with people definitely helped. I think my story alone is one thing that helps motivate people because they kind of see like, if he made it through this and and they see like they've never even gone through a thing that they perceive to be as hard, they're like, if he made it through that, I can make it through this. And it's like, okay, cool. And then for the people that need the physical word of like, come on, you got this. Like, you know, you can do it. They can feel it. They can feel it on the person, right? They can feel it come off and like, I really mean this. Like, I really mean that you got this rep. Like, don't give up on this and like, don't quit this thing. And when it's coming from a person that they can trust, that they know that has been through a thing, they're more inclined to listen to me, right? Like, if if a person doesn't know you to have gone through anything, it kind of just sounds like you're just saying words, right? Like you're supposed to say it, right? Versus if they know, man, Brandon's been through a lot of things, and he's telling me like you can push through, like you can make it. Like if I made it through, then he can make it through, right? If he made it through, then I can make it through. So it's a thing like I think people can actually sense that, people can feel that, what people call the vibe, right? Like there's these we all have this frequency that we vibrate at, right? People can absolutely feel the vibe from a person. They can feel that I'm not joking with them, that I'm not playing with them, that I know that they got this thing. So I think motivating one requires you to be true to yourself. Right? Like you have to absolutely be able to motivate. I'm totally motivated by myself. I actually don't have a particular thing I can set on as far as like an external thing, right? Not even my children. My children aren't my motivation, like I am, right? Like I motivate myself to get up every day and live, right? If I have a day that it feels a little tougher than the others, then I look myself in the mirror and say, "Come on, Brandon, you got this. This is what you say you wanted to do. Come on, let's go." And I do that same thing. So if you can motivate yourself, you can motivate other people. You just have to be sincere about it. You have to be true about it. Can't like don't just do it because you want to make an Instagram reel on it, or right? You just want to try to get some clicks or some views on it, right? Like to me, that's not what it's about. It's about impacting the person. I can have a million views on a thing, but if it doesn't hit home with anybody, then it's pointless,
Mm.
right? If a person can't use it, it's pointless, right? And I think, seeing a lot of people, do stuff like that, I'm like, those of us, I don't know how old you are, but
30.
there are those, right? So we lived in a time before social media validated who you were, right? And I think people see these hearts and think like this means you're important. If you don't get a lot of these, people feel like they're not important. Like it's like that's not true, right? Because people were being motivated far before you clicked like or far before you commented and put three flames on the bottom of it or something like that. Like people were doing that far before that. You meant something the moment you were conceived, right? So I think it takes that one, just doing it in a sincere way, but also, being like knowledgeable about a thing. You might say a thing that piques someone's interest and they might want to dig a little bit more, right? And if you plagiarize a thing that someone else said, again, you're just doing a thing that's just wrong. It's misleading, right? So have your own experiences also, because then these are other things you can share with people. So that's really just how I motivate people. That's how I'm able to do it. I'm just straight up.
You mentioned Kobe Bryant
Yeah,
and Conor McGregor and Ronnie Coleman. What do they have? Like it seems like you almost take them as like mentors in a way. Like what do they have
yeah.
that you internalize?
Kobe will probably be my number one. You know, when I was in high school, everybody like idolized Allen Iverson, and I was like, "That's cool. I like AI," but I was a Kobe Bryant fan. I was like, "Man, I'm like something about this guy, man." I'd always just loved his gameplay. I loved how like vicious he was on the court. So I was like, "I'm gonna play basketball too, and I'm gonna be just like that. Like I'm gonna be so hard with it when I'm out here." And just seeing how his work ethic was, when you see how some of the players speak about him, they're like, man, everybody was going to the club, he'd be going to the gym. And he was straight up with people. Like, I'm not gonna they one good player was, he said like he was telling the coaches, like, we're never gonna win a championship because we got these guys on the team. Right. I'm like, you can't be mad at honesty. You can, but that's your fault, right? So I liked one, his work ethic, his drive, his go was just right. And I say that about myself. I don't hit the brakes, right? All gas, right? I'm just hitting the brakes. I mean, I'm never hitting the brakes, right? And one thing I like about Conor McGregor, man, I like his I like his arrogance, I guess people would call it. I like that. I think um I like to say I'm a good balance between um being like really confident and like secure and humble, but also like narcissistic also, right? Like I'm like everyone I think has these little bits and pieces of these things that are in them. And once it's exaggerated to one side, you know, just from what I've seen, if a person's a little too humble and their exaggerated version of humble, they tend to have low self-esteem, right? And if a person is too exaggerated to the other side of being confident, then they're really narcissistic. They believe the world revolves around them. So I noticed that people just have to have these balances between the both, right? Then when you 'cause, when you look up like things, words that are synonymous with those two words, you'll see that that's the stuff that ends up coming from it, right? Low self-esteem comes from being far too humble, right? Like you don't necessarily look at yourself in high regard, and being far too confident, you tend to be overconfident, you tend to be step into arrogance, and then you start to step into those narcissistic traits. because it's just excessive. Um, and Ronnie Coleman, man, I mean, he's the GOAT when it comes to bodybuilding. I love I mean, I would love to put Sylvester Stallone up there also. I love the change that these men do when it comes to changing their bodies, right? I'm a believer in change. I'm a believer that the moment we change our mind is the moment that we change as individuals, right? But to see a person can be that disciplined to change their body over a period of time, no matter how long it took, like that takes discipline. Most people don't want to do that to live a better life. Right? These guys were just doing it to just change their physiques up. So when it comes to stuff like that, when it comes to these guys, these particular people, we're eventually going to put women up there also. I don't want any women to feel left out, for sure, um, because they're amazing women athletes, right? That you know express the same levels of dedication and the same levels of discipline. Um, so I want to definitely put a few up there, but those three in
Who's the first
particular.
woman? Who's the first woman is going to go up there?
It's either going to be Serena Williams, or there's a woman bodybuilder right now. Her name's like Franciele Matos or something like that. I really like she's a mom, she's a wife. So when I see, women that are in a sport that's really like male dominated and really coming out on top and doing their thing while still balancing being a mom, right? And being a wife, I'm like, oh, she's awesome. Like we got a spot already like carved out on the wall that either she's gonna go on or Serena's gonna go on. I'm probably gonna put Serena up there first. I watched their story, King Richard. It's about like her and her sister and her dad and how, he got them to where they're at now. They played the sport, but it was the way that their dad kind of like navigated through this, man. He's the man for real. Like he seems like a pretty solid guy. So yeah, she'll probably be up there first.
All right. Hey, I think I'm gonna finish up the podcast now, but that was incredible.
Cool. Thank
You
you.
know, I'm looking. I know you haven't even mentioned a book, but I'm looking forward to one day reading your book because
Yeah.
I,
I would like that. I feel like my book would be so long. Uh because I feel like I've lived so many lives in such a short amount of time. It definitely, like when I hear it, actually, my mom was the first one that brought it to my attention. It was at my first bodybuilding show, and she was like, "This is a beautiful thing to get to watch." And she's like, "I'd never, not many people get to see it, right? Not many people get to see stuff like this, to get to know a person like this, let alone to give birth to the person that goes through all this stuff." And you're like, my mom, man, that's why she just came in and she just like, "I got to give you a hug really quick." She didn't even know I was doing it. She just popped up at the house. But yeah, it would definitely be like a wild book, man. Definitely be wild.
and you think you'll do a podcast?
I think I'll do a podcast uh once I feel it.
Yeah,
I'm not a multitasker. I'm really good at focusing.
yeah.
Like I'm really good at focusing on one particular thing. I believe that that's what our minds do. It doesn't necessarily like to divide its power, its energy up into multiple different things. But if you just focus, I think of like a magnifying glass, right? Like once you get the beam, the sun ray just right coming through the magnifying glass, that's when you get the full power of it. But if you don't, it's just energy, spread out over a general area. So I like to just kind of treat my mind like that. Let me focus on one area at a time, master that, because I'll never lose that information or the ability to be able to do that thing. And now I'll just move on to the next thing. And I'll just, step into podcasting. And yeah, I mean, hopefully I could just use it to help motivate people and bring, whether it's awareness to whatever situations are going on with people, or to help people adjust their mindsets. I would definitely love to do a thing like that for sure.
Mm. I feel like I could have talked to you for another 2 hours, but I think this is 2 hours is generally when we finish the podcast, so
Yeah. All
that
right.
works. Hey, where can people find you? Like, you have an Instagram? Do you have anything else?
Yeah, Instagram is Morph Fitness, MORPHT Fitness. Um, we're on Facebook. I think my Facebook's just my name though. I'm working on trying to like navigate through that. Right now we're just on Instagram a lot. I'm trying to make sure I post every day. Um, on TikTok, I'm still trying to figure TikTok out. I'm still new to stuff like this. I should probably get a person that like this is what they do and get a person that's like create the content for stuff like this. Um, and we're located. Our gym's located in Westboro, Pennsylvania. Uh, these are all like really small towns. Um, and they're all being built up now as we speak. Like they're like people are populating these areas really big. Right, I mean, like a lot right now. So yeah, we're on there. We're on um, and that other thing that just came out, like Threads or something like that. That's a new platform. I'm like, there's every time I start to figure one out, I just come up with a new one. So right now, primarily just we're right on Instagram right now for sure. And
Cool.
that's Morph Fitness. That's the gym name, Morph Fitness. They'll see, a picture of me on there. I've just got back into posting myself on there again. I used to kind of took myself off of there just to post everybody else, but I figure it's a good, mix up, throw me on there, and yeah,
Yeah. Amazing. All right. Talk to you soon.
absolutely. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Thanks. Oh, one more thing.
Oh, yeah,
I
you
am
wanted
going
to
to
ask me a
interview
question?
Brennan. I am going to ask him some questions from the Patreons, from the
Yes,
patrons. And so stick around, join the Patreon. I'm doing this new thing where I'm going to ask every guest a question from the Patreon or multiple questions from the Patreon, and the video will be only posted on the Patreon. So if you
nice,
want to see that, come join me. I'm going to ask Brennan whether or not he believes in aliens.
nice.
Okay, see you
All right.
later.